What if I told you that never attempting, rather than failing, is the worst mistake of your life? Many people, all across the world, have had their lives transformed by a Japanese proverb. You do realize how complex it seems? However, the implications are terrible. The basis of success is failure. It's not learning from your errors. Don't try again. It goes well beyond that. It's the notion that success and failure are not mutually exclusive. The way to success is via failure. A surprising discovery has been made by researchers who study human behavior. Individuals who avoid failing at all costs are far more likely to experience lifelong regret. Do you know why this occurs? Because this kind of person constantly suppresses their own potential, lives in self-limitation, is terrified of the repercussions, fears making mistakes, and is the target of ridicule from friends and family. What's worse, you ask? The majority of these individuals are unaware that they are engaging in this behavior. These folks just don't make an effort. They don't start that company. They don't pursue that path. They don't approach that individual. They don't put money into that dream. Why? Fear. Fear of not succeeding. Fear of rejection. Fear of financial loss. Fear of appearing foolish. Additionally, this fear destroys your dreams before they start. Today, however, we will delve further into this Japanese adage that has the ability to break free from fear and inspire you to strive for your greatest self. Chapter: The Youngster Who Feared Life. I'll tell you about a guy. Let's give him the name Michael. Michael's age was years. A few years prior, he had received his high school diploma. He was hired by an electronics retailer. Although the pay was meager, it covered the expenses. Michael wasn't a moron. He had concepts. He dreamed. He was capable. However, Michael had a fairly typical issue. He was terrified, fear of not succeeding, and every choice he made in life was dictated by that fear. Michael got up in the morning every day. He drank coffee. He left for his job. He returned home. He was a Netflix watcher. He fell asleep. And the same thing happened the following day. It was the same procedure on the weekends. Nothing was altered. What's worse, you ask? Michael was aware that he was being detained. His dream was to launch his own company. He had always done so. From an early age, he dreamed of running his own business, controlling his own schedule, and creating something by hand. But every time he considered getting started, the voice in his head would ask, what if it doesn't work out? What if you lose all the money you've saved? What if people laugh at you? So he didn't take any action. In order to make his money work for him, Michael also desired to invest and research the financial market. However, worry would always surface just before I opened an account with a broking firm. What if he gave up after you lost everything? Michael was considering attending college and pursuing a logical career path, such as engineering. However, worry would sneak in each time she tried to register. What happens if the course doesn't appeal to you? What happens if it's too challenging? What happens if you study something you won't use for years? And he did nothing at all. What else was killing Michael on the inside? Do you know? Sarah was a female he worked with. She had captured Michael's heart for months. She was stunning, smart, humorous, and lovely. His heart raced each time she went by. Every time she grinned, he thought, maybe I'll ask her out today. However, every time he summoned the bravery, fear would strike more forcefully. What happens if she declines? What happens if she makes fun of you? What happens if everyone witnesses your rejection? Michael did nothing as a result. He merely watched as Sarah stayed there grinning. Do you know what's intriguing? For humans to survive, fear is essential. It's a sensation that keeps us vigilant and discourages us from taking risks that could endanger our lives. Those who were more fearful in the past tended to live longer. Consider it. A daring individual in a tribe might be killed by a wild animal assault if they chose to go on a solitary walk in the forest. The terrified individuals who chose to remain in the tribe, however, continued to be alive and well. But today, this antiquated brain process causes us to see everything as a deadly threat when, in fact, it isn't. Consider it. What will happen if you approach someone you like and they refuse to go out with you? Will your life come to an end? Will you be imprisoned? Are you going to die? No, none of that will occur. You may be depressed for a few days if they say no, but you'll quickly resume your regular life. Now consider it from a different angle. What happens if they say yes? What happens if they want to speak with you and learn more about you? Maybe you're missing out on something you've always wanted because you're worried it won't work out the way you want it to. However, be aware that the anguish and regret of never trying are far worse than the discomfort of failing, the agony of not attempting. What was the most depressing aspect of Michael's story? He had been in pain all day. He was not content. He was merely being. Every day when he woke up, he knew he deserved and could have more. However, he would rather endure the anguish of never having than the misery of attempting, because doing so required taking a chance. Furthermore, there was a chance of failure when taking chances. And for Michael, failing was the worst thing that could happen. You know what though? Michael didn't grasp. Already, he was failing. He was failing every day he didn't attempt, failing to be happy, failing to live the life he desired, and failing to reach his full potential. Something that ought to be posted on every wall in the world was said by a psychologist with years of expertise in human behavior. The anguish of regret is far worse than the anguish of momentary failure, because although failure is painful, it eventually passes. You make mistakes, learn from them, make adjustments, and then try again. What about regret though? There is still regret. He will always be by your side. Michael was also accumulating regrets for the rest of his life. He observed his buddies who took chances, made an effort, and persevered after a few setbacks. And while he was just getting by, he witnessed these friends living. Chapter: the day that everything was different. That is, until one day something occurred. Michael was at home. Another typical day comes to an end. Nothing changed on yet another day. He was wasting time by lazily searching the internet. Abruptly, he noticed something. A social media post. A Japanese sentence. No Moto was Shippai. The basis of success is failure. Michael paused. He reread it. The basis of success is failure. He would be moved by something in that sentence. He made a click. He began looking, and everything was altered by what he found. Shippai was Seikou no Moto is more than just a charming saying. It's a way of living. Michael learned that this concept has been ingrained in Japanese culture for decades. Failure is not viewed as the antithesis of achievement in Japan. It is seen to be an essential component of success. Consider it. You fall a lot when you first begin to walk. You make mistakes all the time when you're learning to speak. Every new ability you learn is initially unsuccessful, and you learn exactly from these mistakes. However, society eventually teaches us that making mistakes is embarrassing and that failure is terrible. We are paralyzed by the urge to do things correctly the first time. Michael carried on with his investigation. He found that there is a culture of fail fast, learn fast among Japanese businesses, particularly the most inventive ones. Avoiding errors is not the goal. It's to make minor errors early on before making a big investment. Try again, learn from your mistakes, and try again. Every fall on the mat is a lesson, not a failure, according to Japanese martial arts masters, according to what he read. He studied the idea of Kaizen, which is small step, continuous improvement. Michael too came to a realization. He had dedicated years of his life to avoiding failure. Because you can't have one without the other, he also avoided success in the process. Chapter: Perspective Shift. Michael had trouble falling asleep that night. He thought about all the possibilities he missed, all the times he failed to try, and all the scenarios he never considered for hours. And you were the source of his anger, not other people. Anger over the amount of time squandered. Anger at allowing fear to rule him. Anger at having opted for the security of mediocrity over the danger of greatness. However, Michael also felt something new that he hadn't experienced in a long time, I hope, because he realized at last that failure was not the enemy. The true enemy was the fear of attempting that. The basis of success is Shippai no Moto's failure. It's not. Perhaps you'll grow from your errors. To truly succeed, you must fail. Everyone Michael looked up to had failed, he realized. Before he got it right, the businessman he followed on Instagram went bankrupt twice. He was a fan of that investor. In the beginning, he lost money multiple times. The man who founded his ideal business. Before obtaining funds, he was turned down by investors. It wasn't that they didn't fail. The distinction was that they made an effort and persisted in doing so. Chapter: Initial Steps. Michael felt different when he woke up the following day. He made a self-promise after glancing in the mirror. I will no longer allow fear to make my decisions. Additionally, He began modestly since he recognized that Shippai no Moto does not imply recklessness. It doesn't entail discarding everything and holding out hope. It entails taking calculated risks. Michael had no family to provide for. He was childless. He didn't have any major obligations. He had the greatest advantage in life, the ability to fail. He therefore made the decision to take advantage of that. He invited Sarah to coffee right away. Does it look easy? Michael, however, found it frightening. He practiced his speech all morning. He had perspiration on his hands. His heart was pounding quickly. Don't do that. What if she says no? The voice in his head yelled, but Michael took a deep breath and reminded himself that failure is the foundation of success. If she said no, he would learn, he would grow, he would move on. But what if he didn't try? He would live the rest of his life wondering what if. Then Michael approached her table and said, "Hey Sarah, I know this might sound a little strange, but would you like to grab a coffee with me after work?" His heart practically leaped out of his chest. Sarah turned to face him, and he grinned, saying, "I thought you'd never call me. Of course I want to." Michael nearly passed out. She was also waiting. He had been plagued by a fear of something that never existed for months. Chapter: The Domino Effect. That coffee changed something in Michael. It wasn't because he began dating Sarah. That came later. Instead, it was because he demonstrated to himself that fear was more powerful than reality, and that once you overcome one fear barrier, the others begin to fall as well. A few weeks later, Michael opened his first account with a broking firm. He didn't invest all of his money. On the contrary, he set aside a small sum that, if lost, wouldn't ruin him. He then started studying, reading, learning, and testing strategies. Did he make a mistake? Of course he did. Did you lose money on your first trades? Definitely. But do you know what Michael did? He examined his mistakes, modified his approach, and gave it another go. After several months, he was already experiencing favorable outcomes. Nothing outrageous, but I was learning and, more importantly, I was doing it. Michael then began working on his business idea, but he didn't quit his job right away. That wouldn't have been wise, but he began working in his free time, developed a basic business plan, tested the concept on a few people, and solicited feedback. His initial product version was a total failure. No one wanted to purchase it, but Michael persisted by asking, "Why?" And people talked. "It's too costly. It doesn't solve my actual problem. The packaging doesn't inspire confidence." Michael made adjustments. The second version was better, but it hasn't taken off yet. The third version began to sell, slowly but steadily. And Michael came to the amazing realization that every error was feedback rather than a failure. The market taught him how to do it correctly. A researcher who spent years studying successful people in various fields found that a percentage of them failed more than once. However, the difference between those who succeeded and those who didn't wasn't skill or good fortune, but rather how these people handled failure. A neuroscientist with years of experience found that our brains are unable to distinguish between actual fear and imagined fear. Successful people saw failure as data for your information as part of the process, while those who failed to realize their dreams saw failure as a form of identity. I failed, therefore I am a failure. This shift in perspective is what separates living with regret from realizing your dreams. Michael's brain responded to his fear of calling Sarah as though he were confronting a predator, but in reality, there was no actual threat, just a fear of discomfort, rejection, or feeling ill for a short while, and this fictitious fear was keeping him from living. Chapter: The Truth About Risks. Now, let me be very clear because I don't want you to misunderstand. Shippai was Seikou no Moto doesn't mean being careless, betting everything on the red, and hoping for the best. If you have a family to support, you can't just abandon everything and pursue your dreams. That's not courage, that's recklessness. If you have kids who rely on you, you need to be strategic, take calculated risks, and take wise risks. Maybe you'll work on your project in your free time before leaving your job. Maybe you should accumulate a month financial reserve before making the transition. Maybe you'll start small and grow gradually. This is not fear, this is wisdom. However, if you're young, have no significant responsibilities, and are free to fail without ruining the lives of others, you have a unique privilege. You can make errors, you can attempt, you might fail, and life won't end. What's even more bizarre is that the younger you are, the more you should try and fail, because this is the time when you learn the fastest and have the greatest energy to start over. The cost of failure is lowest at this point. Michael was years old, had no children, no large debts, and no one was depending on him, but he was living as though he had everything to lose when, in reality, he had everything to gain. A year later, after that night when Michael found Shippai no Moto, his life was entirely different. He was still employed at the electronics store, but this time it was a deliberate decision rather than a prison, because his business was expanding slowly but steadily. He hadn't quit his job yet, but he already had a sizable additional income, and more importantly, he had a plan. If things kept getting better over the coming months, he would make the move. Michael was investing on a regular basis, learning and developing. He had already experienced losses on multiple occasions, but he had also made a profit. He was also learning how to manage risk. You know what else? After months of dating Sarah, Michael was shocked that he had spent so much time being scared to ask her out. The biggest change, however, was an internal event rather than an external one. Michael was allowing fear to paralyze him more and more. He was still afraid, of course. Fear is a human emotion, but he now realized that fear was a sign that he was maturing rather than a sign to stop. Every time he experienced fear, he asked himself, what's the worst that could happen? Can I manage this? And the majority of the time, the response was, yes. Chapter 9. The things he discovered. In that 1 year, Michael discovered several things that fundamentally altered him. I want to share it with you today, since it's possible that you are similar to the previous Michael. The first lesson is that failure is not irreversible. Regret is the ability to try again after failing. Modify, enhance, and begin again. However, what happens if you don't make an effort? You will always be plagued by that what if. Michael came to the realization that the pain subsided each time he failed at something. For several days, possibly a week, he was unhappy. Then what though? Life continues as usual. However, what about the years he didn't try? Every day, that ached. The second lesson, things is not necessary to do things correctly the first time. Actually, it's very hard to do it correctly the first time. Before discovering a product that worked, Michael experimented with 5 distinct iterations. Before he became consistent, he made scores of poor investments. Before he was able to call Sarah naturally, he had a number of difficult exchanges. And that is typical. That's how it operates. No one ever does it correctly the first time. No one. You won't start if you're waiting to have the ideal plan. The third lesson is that fear never goes away. You simply learn to take action in spite of it. Michael is still afraid. The worry reappears each time he starts a new venture. He experiences anxiety each time he makes a bigger commitment. However, he now realizes that fear is not the issue. Letting your fear make the final decision. That's the issue. Those who are brave are not fearless. These individuals take action in spite of their dread. The fourth lesson is that the majority of your anxieties are unfounded. Michael came to a realization when he finally paused and considered his fears. Percent of the things he feared never came to pass. He feared Sarah would reject him. Yes, she replied. He feared losing all of his investment money. He did suffer some losses, but nothing disastrous. He feared that his firm might fail. Yes, it did. He always imagines the worst-case scenario since the human brain is designed to protect us. However, things are rarely as horrible as we imagine in real life. The fifth lesson is that flawed activity is preferable to idealized perfection. Michael planned the ideal bargain for years. It never lifted off the ground. However, he learned more in months than in years of planning once he began with a decent enough version. Because it's only when you do that you really learn. Test it in the real world, gather feedback, and make adjustments. Planning is crucial, but sometimes you have to get started, even if it's not ideal. The true idea underlying philosophy is covered in this chapter. Let me now reveal Shippai no Moto's immense power. Because it goes beyond simply not being scared of failing. It goes deeper than that. In Japan, wabi-sabi, the acceptance of imperfection as a component of beauty, is linked to this ideology. Similar to kinugi, the technique of using gold to fix shattered ceramics so that the scars become an integral part of the object's beauty. This is the main idea. You are not diminished by your shortcomings. They strengthen you. You get experience with each error you make. You learn how to get back up better every time you fall. If you take lessons from every setback, you'll get closer to success. Failure is not the issue. Failing and not taking any lessons from it is the issue. Failing and giving up is the issue. The issue is that you don't even try because you are so terrified of failing. Consider it. When a newborn is beginning to walk, they fall numerous times. However, because babies don't think, the infant doesn't think, "Man, I'm a failure. I'll never be able to walk." However, the infant just keeps trying until he eventually learns to walk. And you used to be like that. You made an attempt, failed, and then tried again. Just curiosity and determination, without fear or condemnation. However, you eventually learned to be terrified. You discovered that making mistakes is bad, that failure is embarrassing, and that you should always do things correctly, and you were paralyzed by that. Shippai no Moto encourages you to adopt that perspective once more. The attitude that failure is a necessary component of the process rather than its conclusion. What's even more absurd about all of this? In one study, researchers asked participants of all ages, "What is your biggest regret in life?" You know what the overwhelming majority of them said? It has nothing to do with what went wrong. It was about actions that these individuals did not take. The company didn't open the trip. They didn't take the person who wasn't asked out on the course. They didn't take the risk. And they didn't take people who were nearing the end of their lives. They don't regret their failures. They regret the chances they didn't take, of the attempts that were never made, of the dreams they let die out of fear. So let me ask you a question. Do you want to look back years later and be proud of your efforts, or regret the chapter, the complete conversion? Michael has changed since then. He is only a few years old. He is still a young man. The distinction, though, is that he is now living rather than merely existing. His company already makes more money than the store pays its employees. The change will be made by him. He'll be quitting his job soon. He is afraid, but it's not the same kind of terror. It's a thrilling fear. It's the fear of someone leaping off a cliff while being aware that they have wings. Sarah and Michael intend to move in together, and he still finds it hard to comprehend that he nearly let her leave out of fear of being rejected. His investments are increasing gradually but steadily. He has already experienced setbacks. He's already committed errors. He's already lost money. But he learnt something from each error, and he's getting better. Michael enrolled in college. Is it challenging? Indeed. Does he ever consider giving up? Naturally. But he keeps going because he now understands that hardship is growth rather than failure. The most amazing thing is that Michael started setting an example for his buddies. The same friends who've seen him imprisoned, terrified, and motionless are now witnessing his life. When they question, "Dude, what's changed about you?" Michael simply responds, "I stopped being afraid of failing, and I started being afraid of not trying." This is an amazing finding found by a behavioral psychologist who studies human motivation. Those who fulfill their aspirations tend to follow a certain pattern. Additionally, it has nothing to do with IQ or talent. Luck has nothing to do with it. It has to do with a straightforward trait: discomfort tolerance. Those who can endure the discomfort of uncertainty are the ones who succeed in realizing their aspirations. The unease caused by anxiety and uncertainty about the outcome, these individuals continue to behave in that manner. What about those who fail to realize their dreams? They are the ones who put comfort first. They would rather be safe in mediocrity than uncomfortable in excellence. In the end, it has little to do with aptitude. It's a matter of decision. You decide to put up with the momentary discomfort of attempting, or do you opt for the enduring solace of regret? After years of studying successful entrepreneurs, a researcher found that most successful entrepreneurs had failed enterprises before succeeding. Before success, there were 4 deals, 4 efforts, and 4 failures. What distinguishes them from those who gave up after making their first error? Easy. They persisted in attempting. They realized that every setback was not the end. It was a part of the trip. No motto was Shippai. The basis of success is failure. In actuality, say, "Let's get back to you. What do you fear? Because you're scared of failing, what are you not doing? What company are you not starting? Which course do you not enroll in? The person you are not phoning is who? Are you not making any investments? What is the dream you are murdering because you are afraid? I need you to comprehend one thing. Failure is fleeting. However, regret never goes away. You can try again tomorrow if you don't succeed now. However, if you don't attempt today, you'll be in the same spot tomorrow. And in years, you won't regret the unsuccessful attempts you made. You'll be sorry you didn't try those items. When Michael learnt this at a young age, it drastically altered his life. What is your age and, more significantly, how long will you wait? The basis of success is Shippai no Moto failure. Don't be scared of failing. Fear that you won't try, because making mistakes isn't ultimately the biggest failure. It's about never having the guts to start. I encourage you to subscribe to the channel if you've already watched this video. Additionally, you might think about becoming a member if you want to help the channel. Content will be made available to members in advance. I sincerely appreciate your time and all of your help. Now leave a remark below. What are you going to do first today? What will you attempt that you were hesitant to do? Don't hold off any longer. Try, fail, grow, learn, and most importantly, survive. And never forget to be in the moment. Walk with dignity. Observe the route. Until the following video.